So welcome everyone. Today I have a very special guest that's joining us, Dr. Karl Nixdorf of the Spine and Balance Center of New Jersey. I've known Dr. Karl for about 4 years now, and I'd love to give you a chance to get to know him as well. So welcome to the show, Dr. Karl.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here.
So let's begin with the beginning. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Where are you from? Tell us a little bit about your undergraduate education, what you were looking to do with that, and some of your early jobs as soon as you had your bachelor's degree. If you will, I think our audience would love to hear that.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in New Jersey. I kind of grew up in South Jersey. I attended Valley Forge Military Academy on a music scholarship. And from there, I went to Stockton State, which is now a university, and I majored in biology and psychology. And upon graduation, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I had applied to medical school, was accepted, but didn't think I would have the endurance to go for 6 more years of schooling and the residency and everything else. So I went into medical sales. So I had a very successful career in corporate medical sales, working for Fortune 100 companies, and finally ended up with a biotech company out of California that offered me stock options at sign-on. And then when the company sold, I went back to chiropractic school. So I was 38 when I went back to school. And when I graduated, I worked for a friend of mine for a couple of years, and then I opened my own practice in 1996.
Great. So that's what I wanted to delve into next. In 1991, I think you left the corporate world and decided to go back to school. Is that correct?
That is
decided
correct.
to go to chiropractic school in 1991. So most people have a story behind that. A number of chiropractors that I've spoken with, they all have a reason which led them to chiropractic. So if you can, tell our viewers a little bit about what your story is and what led you to make that decision to leave your corporate work environment and decide to go back to school to study chiropractic.
Okay, when I graduated from undergraduate school, I really didn't know anything about chiropractic, but one of my close classmate friends was actually going to chiropractic school. And she explained to me what it was. And since my degree was actually a double major in biology and psychology, and I said, well, this is really pretty interesting. This is the mind-body connection. But I didn't think much more of it at that time. So after I started working, I had gotten married. We had 3 kids. I was on the school board at the private school that my kids were going to. And I got out of the car one day, and I just collapsed in excruciating back pain. And it turned out that one of the other parents there was a friend of mine, and he was a chiropractor. So I called him from the parking lot, and I said, listen, I can't move. Can you help me? So he had me come into the office, and I went there a couple times a week for a period of time. I started to feel better. And as most good chiropractors do, they give you a regime of home exercises to do. And he says, if you do the exercises, you won't have to come back. And of course, like most of my patients today, I tell them to do these exercises, and nobody does, including myself. I didn't either. So didn't do the exercises, the pain came back, and I went back, and then I finally kind of got with the program and decided to do what I was told to do. And getting to know this chiropractor a little bit better, I realized that this was a really interesting business, and it kind of fit with my whole philosophy on life. I mean, the mind-body connection, natural healing. I've always thought that the body had the ability to heal itself. And that's really one of the essence of chiropractic, that the body has that ability given the opportunity. And if we provide it with the proper nutrition, you get adjusted on a regular basis, the body can actually do some miraculous things.
Awesome. So you had a life experience that led you to chiropractic, essentially.
That's correct.
It was a pivotal point in your life where you needed some help, and you were led to chiropractic and decided that's what you wanted to do with your life. That's essentially it, right?
That about sums it up.
Okay, so how did you choose which school to go to then? I know you're from the Bergen County area. How did you decide to choose what school?
Well, in this particular case, it was actually by default. At the time, I had applied to New York chiropractic schools. At the time, was in Long Island. So when I got my acceptance, they said, and by the way, we're moving to Seneca Falls, upstate New York. And at that time, I already had 3 kids, and I don't think the wife would have tolerated me moving out for the weekend and coming home on the weekends.
Right,
But then a
right.
friend of ours said, the University of Bridgeport is opening up a chiropractic school. So I met with the dean, who had a practice here in New Jersey, and he gave me a rundown on the program. And that's how I ended up at the University of Bridgeport. And I think it was a great decision, but it wasn't mine to make. It was really kind of forced upon me. But of all the chiropractic schools out there, it's one of the top ones now because they really have a medically based program that combines with the whole chiropractic philosophy.
Excellent, excellent. So there are a number of different techniques used in chiropractic. There's probably about 5 sort of common ones. Um, as I recall, you're a practitioner of the Cox Technique. So if you can explain to us a little bit about what the Cox Technique is versus some of the other techniques like Thompson or Gonestad or some of the other, common techniques that are used in the practice of chiropractic. Can you share that with us? And also I wanted to add, I know that you are part of a very elite group in the practice of Cox Technique. As I understand it, I think there's only about 200 chiropractors that are licensed for the Cox Technique. Is that correct?
It's not licensed, but certified by Dr.
Certified.
Cox himself.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of chiropractors out there who do Cox Technique, but I'm of the 200 you're referring to, I am one of the 200 that's certified in both lumbar, low back, as well as cervical.
Okay.
So
Okay.
very
So
few
you
have
have
the
that
certificate.
special certification, which puts you in a pretty elite club of chiropractors in the United States, because as I recall, there are about 70,000 chiropractors in the United States, according to the American Chiropractic Association. And so that puts you in a pretty elite group of people who are certified in the Cox Technique. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, Cox Technique is it's a low force technique. It's flexion distraction with long axis traction, which very simply, it's a way of trying to decompress disc herniations, whether it be cervical or lumbar, cervical being the neck, lumbar being the low back. And it's been more widely researched than any other technique out there in reputable institutions, hospitals in the Midwest. And as I got older, as my patients got older with me, I realized that the osseous manipulation, or the cracking of the back, as people like to refer it to, doesn't always feel so good, because as we get older, we develop arthritic conditions, and sometimes the arthritis kind of gets in the way of that type of manipulation. And I know myself, I don't like my neck being adjusted that way anymore. So when I looked around for a non-force or a low force type of technique, the research basically indicated the Cox Technique is the way to go. They have a table that's dedicated to that technique. They have the training, and they have the data to back up the efficacy of that particular protocol. So that's when I decided to do it. I bought the table, and that's what we do. The difference, Gonstead is a actual osseous manipulation. You're actually moving the bones with your hands. You hear that cracking, and it's based on drawing lines on x-rays. Thompson technique that you mentioned is actually very similar to Cox. It is a flexion distraction, but it only basically addresses one plane of motion. So Cox is really kind of the evolution of that technique.
I see. I see. Now, what is the fear of patients when they come in? They hear about cracking and all that sort of thing. Do you find that patients are fearful of the experience the first time that they've experienced it, that they've come to you, or any chiropractor? Is that the patients have any anxiety over that at all?
If it's the first time to see a chiropractor, they are a little apprehensive at first. And the idea of somebody taking your neck and twisting and contorting it is somewhat disheartening at first. But I try to explain to them what it is, and I kind of compared to if you crack your knuckles, and most people have done that on occasion.
Yeah.
The sound that you hear is not bone moving on bone. It's actually nitrogen gas escaping from the joint capsule. So if you do crack your knuckles on a regular basis, you realize if you do it once, you can't do it for a period of time. So just because you don't hear a crack doesn't mean that the bones haven't been moved. The idea of manipulation, whether it's Johnstead, Cox, is really to get the joints to move through the range of motion that they're capable of, not the cracking. The cracking lets you know that things have happened, but once you explain to them what to expect and how they may feel, it's usually, you don't get too much resistance. But I do choose to use the Cox technique on patients who are, say, over the age of 45 or 50, especially those who have never been adjusted before, just because it's a little less aggressive.
Great, great. Thank you for that explanation. It's really very interesting. I wanted to move on next to talk about specialty. I know some chiropractors specialize in a given area. Some of them do, pediatric, chiropractic, or, pregnancy, women, women chiropractic, others sports chiropractic. Do you have a specialty area or an area that you like to work within?
Yeah, my practice is really focuses on pain, whether it be acute or chronic. I have treated pediatric patients in the past. I don't make it a habit. I don't talk about pediatric chiropractic, but if somebody brings a patient, I will do it. But so my practice really focuses on people who have sustained an injury, either due to a sports-related incident, a car accident, an injury on the job, and basically it's a process to get the people feeling better again. And it's not necessarily going to be a lifetime commitment to go in for chiropractic treatment. Many of the patients decide to stay on, but once they're past the acute phase, then it's really kind of up to them as to what they decide to do in terms of continuation of treatment.
I see. Excellent. So now most of us, we have jobs, whatever our jobs are in life, we have to earn a living, right? So we have to make money, we have bills to pay and responsibilities. But so few people get enough satisfaction from their jobs, right? Where they don't look at it as a job. They do it because they have to do it. Other people get a lot of satisfaction. So can you tell me a little bit about, in your profession, what gives you satisfaction with your patients? What is it that you see or gives you the signals that tells you that you're really doing something very good for your patients?
Well, I am a social person. I spent 16 years in sales, so I actually look forward to the social interaction, which is a big part of what we do. And communication with your patients is important, whether you're a chiropractor or a medical doctor. But I think chiropractors as a whole do a much better job of communicating with their patients than the medical doctors do. When somebody comes in pain and they can barely walk, and after the first adjustment, they can feel significantly better, and you see that progression, and you can just tell. I mean, you sense the gratitude, and it makes me feel good to know that I help somebody have a better day. The other thing is, I'm working for myself. I don't have a boss telling me what I need to do. I mean, I know what I need to do, and I set my own hours, and so I have plenty of flexibility.
Right.
So it's very good.
So it's a double gratification when you did work in the corporate world at one time, so you knew what it was like to have a boss and someone to tell you where you had to be, when you had to be there, and all that sort of thing. So the freedom of having your own practice, is a great thing. And plus, that you're helping people when you get people that provide reviews or tell you, how much you've helped them, and that's very gratifying as well. So it's sort of a double gratification, I would presume, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Great. Okay, so next thing I wanted to do is talk about how chiropractic may be changing. There seems to be some movement within the field towards some chiropractors which were practicing in private practice by themselves, moving into either integrative practices now or functional situations. Can you explain to our viewers a little bit about what those things are, how they're different, and where you see chiropractors going?
Okay, that's a pretty wide topic today, but I would say that as in most professions, with time, concepts change. Most chiropractors, say 30, 40 years ago, were independent. They worked solely on their own. They pretty much had wellness practices, and they were pretty much subluxation based.
Mhm.
Insurance companies recognized chiropractors. I think back in the 80s, when I started, they were actually recognized. But with the way insurance is today, people are looking for ways to help patients, but also be able to still earn a living. So a lot of chiropractors have integrated their practice with medical doctors. They've integrated physical therapy or acupuncture, brought in nutrition. There's a lot of different ways in which you can integrate the practice. And then all those things I think are good. My practice now is like I work 3 days a week, but I share the space, or I actually rent the space out to other practitioners. So we cover the overhead. So from a business standpoint, the model has changed drastically. The reimbursements for any kind of healthcare professional has actually gone down over the last 20, 30 years. So now you see the advent of these large group practices. And really what it comes down to is if you can reduce your cost, your operating costs, you can still maintain a fair profit margin. To do it
Right.
single-handedly today, I think you and I have had this conversation before. I can actually show you that I'm making 35 to 40% less per visit, regardless of the insurance today versus in 1996 when I started. And medical doctors are going through the same thing. My rent hasn't
Yeah.
gone down. My staff gets paid more.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to, and you can only see so many patients in a day. So you cannot compensate for the loss in revenue by seeing more patients up to a point. So
Right. Right.
a lot of different variables out there right now.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to get into that because we're actually going to do a part two, and we're going to talk about the business of chiropractic. So let's move on to here's a little fun thing. Hopefully, it's fun. We'll do our little version of a lightning round, if you will. I'm going to give you 5 words or phrases, and tell me what comes to mind with each one of those, if you
Okay,
will. Okay, number 1, 179.
that's my address.
There you go. Number 2, tune up.
Maintenance.
Okay. Number 3 is Cox 8.
That's the latest Cox table for delivery of the Cox Technique, both cervical and lumbar. Prior to that, the Cox tables did not have a cervical apparatus.
Okay. Number 4, natural acceleration.
That's a good one. ah, I'd say healthy lifestyle.
Okay. And number 5, and you mentioned this word before, wellness.
Wellness is the absence of disease, or if you actually break the word down, dis-ease, which is where it originated from.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for that. Are there any final thoughts or things that you want to tell our listeners today about either you or your practice that you'd like to leave them with?
If anybody's out there suffering with any type of neck or back pain, or really any type of non-surgical orthopedic pain, I would encourage them to call, make an appointment, come and see me. No commitment. The first consultation is always free. And then we can decide whether it's a chiropractic issue or maybe you need to be referred to either an orthopedist or another type of specialist. And because I've been in practice for as long as I have an extensive network of medical doctors who I refer to that I have confidence in. So that if I sent you to one of these doctors, you would not be disappointed.
Excellent. So in that same line of thought, tell our viewers how they can get in touch with you.
Well, I'm on the internet at drkarlnixdorf.com, and my telephone number is 201-907-5092. I'm right here in Teaneck at 179 Cedar Lane. Today, we work strictly by appointments in view of the COVID epidemic. So there are no walk-ins anymore, but we have plenty of availability, so we can always accommodate new patients.
Okay, great. So thanks again for joining us today, sharing a little bit about you, your practice with our viewers and listeners. I want to encourage everybody to keep an eye out because we're going to do a part two with Dr. Karl Nixdorf coming up shortly, in which we will discuss the business of chiropractic and talk a little bit what the business end of it is like. So thanks again for joining us and sharing your information with us today. And we look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Thank you, David. A pleasure to be here.
My pleasure as well. Thank you.